Good morning, guys. Welcome back to the channel. Before we start throwing the supercharger onto the E92 M3, there's two things that we need to do. One including the M3, the other including the FRS, both tuning related. VF engineering needs the readout, the stock readout off the ECU. I believe that is what they said. Please send over a readout of the vehicle's ECU using the instructions attached. Okay, cool. So we have the Hex Flash app downloaded right here. We're gonna go ahead and plug this guy in to the car via the hex cable, which was included by VF engineering. So this is going to plug into the OBD2 port, other side right into the computer USB, and we should be able to get the readout off of this M3. We got it plugged in. Car is on. Hit next. And let's see what happens. Read ECU memory, full program and calibration data. Click OK, and we're gonna save this in our documents. And then we're gonna send this over to VF, and we should get a tune back in the email. 50 minutes later, we finally got the stock ROM off of this car and emailed over to VF. Now we're gonna do a quick reflash on this thing. We're still working on getting the idle dialed in and just like the startup idle, that kind of stuff dialed in right now. So we're gonna kind of simultaneously be tuning this car with DB tuned and installing that supercharger. This thing's probably gonna take a while. It's got a fairly large fuel system for an FRS. There's not many people that run 1200s on an FRS. So it might take a bit to get dialed in, but I have faith that she will run well. New tune is installed. Let's go ahead and give her a little data log. Log to file. Ooh, she's still not happy. It's a little bit better, but still she's not wanting to run. Okay, let's make some serious progress on the M3 today. I at least want to get like everything mocked up. We may not get it 100% dialed in because we still have to fix that little plastic nipple thing we broke yesterday on the radiator hose. So we got to get that fixed. So what we're going to do is take the supercharger bracket or the mount, the giant freaking mount, and we're going to mock it up to make sure everything lines up with that U bracket that we installed yesterday. This piece right here, and then with this idler pulley. So we have to make sure everything there lines up. All right, let's grab this bracket, make sure everything that we've already installed lines up. That's the only point of test fitting it right now. We may need to do some adjusting on the car. I must say, this thing is freaking beautiful. Excellent, excellent chunk of billet. Definitely took a little bit to figure out what bolts and spacers go where, but this is exactly how the bracket is gonna sit. So the supercharger is gonna literally be sitting right here. This is gonna be crazy, guys. I am so freaking excited. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and pull the bracket back off because we need to mount the supercharger onto the bracket. We may need to clock the supercharger a little bit. I think VF probably already did that, but just in case, I'm gonna do one more test fit with the supercharger mounted up on the bracket. All right, so that is how it's gonna sit. That is pretty freaking cool. Gonna look insane, boys. All right, so we got it pulled back off. I got everything finalized as far as where all the hardware goes. For this bolt right here, there's a this little support bar right here. So it's gonna run from that giant bolt, like so, over to the exhaust manifold and it bolts back into the exhaust manifold. So after we get the supercharger back on the car, we can get this bracket installed and get everything torqued down. Supercharger and bracket is fully installed. Everything is torqued down. It took like 3 hours just because getting that bracket on right there was the hardest freaking thing of the whole entire kit. It's always the small stuff that takes for freaking ever. So next up is the belt. And based off the instructions or this guide, it says it's pretty difficult. It literally says that in the thing. Install belt around all the pulleys. Not easy. So that is how it sits. Let's give it a shot. Blower's mounted with the belt on. I feel like that was probably the most difficult part, but we still have a ways to go, so we might still run into some stuff that's a little bit more difficult. If you guys are in the middle of doing a supercharger on your car and you're trying to figure out how to get the belt on, you have to take these spacers out in between the mount and the block in order to get the belt on. So you kind of fish all that through, put the spacers back on, tighten down the bolts, and then you can put the belt on. From here, we're gonna go ahead, slap together the radiator hoses, and we got to figure out how we're going to fix that plastic piece as well. We got the upper radiator hose on, and then I went ahead and looked on there, and you have to cut this one off of the quick disconnects and install the supplied VF hose. So let's go get that all cut up. Get this guy on there because as of right now it's rubbing on the belt and on the tensioner.
Ooh, that looks bad.
Got a blower on it, eh?
That's sick.
Yeah.
It's so crazy how much more complex this looks in like an Evo.
This shit's gay. I will never do this again. Dude, I've had this assembly on and off like 20 times, and then putting that fucking belt on, bro. I'm never taking this bitch bag off. All right, I'm gonna hit a quick rip to the parts store and see if I can find a little barbed fitting to just thread right into this housing right here. All right, a quick temporary, very, very temporary little fix. I cannot find a barb fitting because there's not much meat on this housing right here. So to last us like 3 or 4 days, just so we can like drive the car, get it off the lift and do all that fun stuff, I'm gonna JB weld that fitting back on. And I already ordered up a new radiator hose, upper radiator hose. You can't order just the fitting, you gotta get the whole hose. So I promised myself that I would never do anything janky to this car. And what I'm doing right now is janky, but it's temporary. So let's get this thing JB welded back together. And as soon as it cures, we can put it on the car. But yeah, thankfully it's the upper hose. And when the new one comes in, it'll take like 20 minutes to swap out. We got to start making some real progress on this thing, or I feel like it's never going to be done. So next up, evap solenoid. There's so much little things like this that we have to do, which I am definitely not used to on like that kind of stuff. So what we have to do, stock hose right here, this U-shaped one, we're going to pull that off, and it's getting replaced with this giant T-shaped one. And I am not sure exactly where this end ends up at. That will connect there. This side will connect there. Okay, so that is how everything with that is routed. I need to go ahead and cut the zip ties, but that is the finished look. And I'm pretty sure this might run up to, I could be wrong, but I think it runs to the BOV or the bypass valve. Next up, 18-inch hose, 1-inch diameter, is gonna connect back here. We did that little mod yesterday, pulled off that factory stuff. So this guy's gonna connect onto there, and then it will run all the way up. And she is gonna connect right there, right on the side. So we gotta get this on with a hose clamp. I just came across another part that I don't think I broke. I could have, but it may have been broken before. Look at this. This side's nice and tight. This is like some part of the PCV system. So yeah, I think we'll be all right. I'm gonna leave that there for now, but obviously I'm gonna replace it, which I'm really hoping I don't have to pull the valve cover to replace that, because if I have to pull the valve cover to replace it, supercharger's coming back off, which does not look fun to do. So let's move on. I'll buy a new one of those. We can swap that out at the same time we fix the radiator hose. This question mark shaped hose will connect right there, and then this end will connect to the intake manifold or plenum. That guy's on. I'm not gonna clamp it yet because we may have to spin this hose a little bit. Went ahead, got this hose on. I'm assuming that's the correct fitting because it fits. So now we have two hoses, this one here and this one here. And I'm not sure where they run. I'm sure I'll show later on in the instruction manual. Before we get much further, I'm gonna go ahead and toss this belt back on, which is for the power steering. So it's the passenger side belt. Before we get this bad boy on, we need to get these bad boys in. So we were supplied with some injectors from VF. I honestly do not know what size they are. I'm assuming they're the right size for this kit because they were included. And it looks very, very, very easy to swap the injectors on this guy. Torque's there, a Torque's there, Torque's there, and a Torque's over on that side. For the fuel rails, pull the rails off, unplug the injectors, throw in the new injectors, put the rails back on, should be done. I think it's safe to say that my initial estimate, I guess you could say, of how long this build was going to take was probably fairly accurate. I think I initially said I want it done by the end of the weekend, and then I read the install guide, and I was like, we could do this in like a day or two. And now I'm like, is it even going to be done by the end of the weekend? We've been working for 10 or 11 hours on this thing already today, and it feels like we've got nothing done. Injectors are in, so that's cool. Stuff is just taking forever on this build. Before I wrap it up for the day, I'm gonna set the intake manifold. What do you call it? I call it a plenum just because I know like the stock one's called the plenum, but I think the manual called it a manifold. Whatever you want to call it, I'm gonna set that on, and I just want to see how it looks. I'm not gonna bolt it on or anything. Just literally set it on the engine and take a look at it and see how good it looks. It's gonna sit probably an inch lower than that, but that looks so freaking sick. There's gotta be some sort of coupler that connects those two. Also, I may have put this hose on wrong because I know it's supposed to connect there, but why is it this long? It's a little sus. I'll figure that out tomorrow. But yeah, that's the overall look of the VF650. That's how it's gonna sit. We do still have, I believe it would be called the heat exchanger. I'm learning a lot of new things on this car, and it's kind of fun. A lot of new things with the M3 and with the Supercharger. So we still have the heat exchanger, all the hoses for that, that pump that I didn't know what it was, that's actually another water pump for the heat exchanger and the supercharger, all that stuff. So we have all that. We do still have a ways to go. I think tomorrow we should be able to get this thing 100% buttoned up, maybe get the first start. I don't really know. I'm gonna try my hardest, but I don't wanna rush this build. So I'm gonna go ahead and call that a day right here, my friends. I hope you guys enjoyed. Peace out. I'll see you guys tomorrow.